right? So how do we get a strategy, right? And that from there, building engagement, right? How do we get that spark back, right? Start with small goals and wins, snowball them. More folks will join as they see more progress. Don't forget to the importance of fun social events to recharge activist spirit. Education and fun events, not dry, boring meetings. Be visible in your community, standing up for your values. Be visible in your community, having fun. Go wave some signs and agitate. Um, I hadn't actually read this until last night, but do go read Your Politics Are Boring as Fuck. Um, because they are, and it's important, right? We talked about earlier we talked about earlier that people are more likely to get involved with something if they have a material interest in it, if it directly impacts them, right? Um, and this short, it's a short essay, gets right at that, and I think it has a great critique of traditional leftist education, right? We're in here talking a lot about how you need to do education, but we shouldn't be trying to replicate how, the left has been doing it for decades, because it's boring as fuck, right? It's reading theories from authors who've been dead for a century, right? It often lacks any kind of, kind of application to modern standards. It often lacks any kind of, you know, orientation towards action items at the end, and it really plays into this kind of elitist, like who's read more books attitude that happens on the left, right? And that's not an exciting thing to get engaged in. It's boring as fuck, and that's not me. I just bought my wife Lenin's The Imperialism, the Highest Form of Capitalism, right? There's value to reading these things, but it has to be done in a very specific way. It has to be done with a purpose. And it has to be done for a reason other than to check it off the list of quintessential readings that you've done. So I think that's a really important, article for people to read, essay for people to read, and kind of think about, like, when you come to our meeting, like, are people bored? And if they're bored, how can we change that, right? And there is a level of business meetings that will always have a little bit of boredom, right? But that's where the other points on this come, right? You've got to have your business meeting. It keeps your, party functioning. But if it's the only thing that you do, the only thing that people have access to get involved with you is a boring thing. And that's immediately cutting off your knees and limiting the number of people who can get involved. Have educational events, right? And like we said, not the ones that the traditional left ones, but have fun educational events. Have educational events that are applicable to people's lives. Have educational events that talk about what can we actually do about these problems, not just analysis, right? But also have fun events, right? In my opinion, some of the best ideas I've experienced in organizing have happened after the meeting, have happened at the bar at 2 a.m, right? I tell a story often about at the Green Party's presidential convention in 2016. We just nominated Jill, and all of the youth caucus, all of the young eco-socialists. At that time, we were the Young Greens, but we all went to a local bar. And I was sitting and I was talking to a close friend of mine, and I was telling him about how I learned that sidewalks make great bar graphs. They make great bar graphs. The lines are already there, like boom, right? But I was a student at my university, and we made graphs on our quad about student debt, right? How much the average student borrowed versus how much the average student paid, to show we're paying double by the end of it, if not more, right? We showed our campus's tuition, which had increased 252% over 10 years, right? The next day, the university put out a press release responding to our graphs. And they tried to spin it, and they said it's actually only raised 150%. So then the next day, we put out a press release and said we liked the nice little fun thing they did there, where they took all of the schools in our system and combined them to get the 150%. Well, to try to erase the fact that our school has always been the cheapest and is catching up, and has actually had a much greater increase than the other schools in our system, right? They responded immediately. And so we're talking about this in the bar, and my friend Michael goes, "Hold on, I've got to go get Michael and Ursula, a different Michael and Ursula." And he runs off, and they run off, and they come back, and they go, "They're too drunk for this conversation, but we need to have it tomorrow." Right? And so that conversation never would have happened in a business meeting because it wasn't relevant to our business meeting, right? It was just a story that I was telling about an experience that I had, but it was able to propel an idea. Right? And so these fun things, they're how we get to know each other. They're how we say the idea that we have that doesn't have a place yet in the business meeting. That's just a kernel, but we need some people to chew on it with us, right? I have a very simple. I always tell people when we're talking about local party organizing, I, I'm a big advocate of a very simple model starting off of 3 meetings a month: a business meeting, right, which we have to keep running, a social event, and an educational event. And by doing all three, you give people 3 different ways to engage in 3 totally different ways, right? The people that want to be involved in admin stuff, that want to be behind the scenes, get to go to the business meeting. That want to talk, inside baseball and party strategy, they get to go to the business meeting. The people that are just kind of interested and want to learn more about you can come out and have a drink with you, right? One thing I will say is most greens do their green socials at bars. At least try to cycle in some non-bars, right? Um, we've got a major alcohol problem in this country, and a lot of young people aren't trying. We recently had an activist meetup. It was at a bar, and when it was raised that there were people who weren't going because it was at a bar, the next one was scheduled at a tea house, right? So try to mix it up. Try to give people and don't just land yourself in a bar, because man, alcohol plus politics can be really ugly sometimes, right? But that's a way that you can meet people and kind of slowly edge them into have those conversations that take more than one, right? 6 months after 6 months showing up to these green drinks, all of a sudden someone shows up at your meeting because you won them over, right? And then have those educational events, right? They allow you to work with other organizations, right, and build relationships and partnerships. They allow you to reach out to experts and knowledgeable people in your community and build those relationships. And they create events for the general public to come and hear your perspective. And then you've got your table in the back, and you get their email address, and then you invite them to the social, and then you invite them to the next rally you're doing, right? But by doing a 3-pronged, monthly calendar of a business meeting, which takes can take some work, right? A social event, which takes almost no work, and then an educational event, which can take some work as well. But once you get in the groove of doing educational events, you'd be surprised how quick it can go, right, in terms of planning. It gives you all these opportunities to meet new people. It gives your current members all these opportunities to get involved and actually start working and doing things. And that in itself can help. It seems like we're like increasing the scope, which would increase burnout. But because we're diversifying the scope, hopefully we're reducing burnout, right? Hopefully we're bringing more people into the fold that are actually taking an active step. And the people that have been carrying all the weight can kind of shift some off to other people. I saw Garrett want to jump in.
Yeah, no worries. Let me see. What was I going to add in there?
It was about the socials.
About what?
It was about the socials.
Yes, definitely the socials. Unfortunately, this is another one of the sort of casualties of COVID that we'll have to see if we can kind of reintegrate. But at least before COVID, man, feels like forever ago. But before COVID, we would usually have these educational events, and a lot of times it would be at like a coffee shop or something where anyone could attend. And you could support the local coffee union, right? So there's all those perks. But like we had, for example, holiday parties. And I remember a holiday party. It must have been 2019. It was like right before the pandemic started. We had a holiday party where we got together, and it was just a party. It was just like come get together and chat with Greens. And we just had a couple of people there that said, well, I'm planning on running for office next year, and so as we're doing our holiday greetings, they got up and said, I'm thinking of running for office, next year. And, and everyone cheered. And it spawned like some just kind of like very informal, over cookies and hot cocoa and stuff, right? Talks about like, oh, why do you want to run for office? Well, tell me more about your district and all. And that allowed us to kind of have this recruiting sort of drive, like not on purpose, but it ended up being that because folks who were new to the Green Party, we had people who like, it was literally their first time ever going to the Green Party meeting, right? They would have never went to a business meeting, but they saw holiday party, come meet the Green Party. And they said, I'll do that. That sounds good. I'll go have some cookies. And they went there and they met some of our candidates. And I forget who it was, but I know we had one person who was like a musician and said like, hey, I'll volunteer to like do some music at future campaign events and all. And, we started to network and find people, and just those casual conversations. Like you never knew like, oh, this person is actually a musician. I didn't know that they played an instrument. You find out all these interesting things about each other. And you build camaraderie, right? You build solidarity with each other. Which is very important for building a movement, trying to do the important work that needs to be done. And also, you're learning about each other's skills and how having these conversations about how we can put these skills to work in building the party and building campaigns and things. So, I highly encourage having some type of social, so that you get all these impacts, right? Not everything has to be formal and stuffy and all, just like that essay is talking about. And in fact, the formal stuffiness should be kept to a minimum, really, because really community is based on, people enjoying each other's company, right? Having fun and learning with each other and all this stuff. And when it becomes a chore, when people are like, it's like a second job or third job or whatever, right? Like, I got to go to the Green Party meeting. Who's going to actually want to do that? Nobody, right? So everything should be fun. And, I think good work kind of flows out of that as we have good discussions with each other.
Another decentralized education model that I just remembered that can really help with this building engagement thing is something that the DuPage County Green Party, which is like the western collar counties or outside of Chicago and Illinois, did. But they had something every month called Hot Topics. And they picked a topic, and it wasn't a present and listen thing. It was a let's have a discussion around this topic with everyone who shows up. And in that case, all you really have to do is pick a topic. And, probably as a green host, be prepared to debunk and counter some things that might come up. But, that's another easy, low key way to do a mix of an educational and a social event, with something like that.